For over 200 years, people have been coming to visit Haworth due to the popularity of the Bronte sisters. They've come to visit the location and look round and see places where the Brontes would have been. But at the end of the 19th and into the early 20th century, they also came to visit another man who was becoming equally famous for a while. His face was appearing on postcards. People came to visit old Timmy. So the reason Tim Feather became famous was because he'd been doing his job well, and he was one of the last of his kind. And a number of photographs were taken, and they became postcards, which were initially for sale around Haworth, Keighley, Stanbury, where Tim Feather lived. But over time, these postcards spread far and wide. And if you've possibly just seen it at the intro, if you've seen Tim Feather's face, it is most likely you will recognise it as a face that appears on postcards across the UK. Even today you can still find that face. A really interesting old character who became famous just for doing his job. And here he is, Tim Feather. Possibly of all the postcards that have his face on them, this is the one you might recognise. And he was born in January 1825. So at the time of filming this, he would have just been 200 years old. He lived at a place called Buckley Green, which is near Pondon Reservoir in Stanbury, and he lived there for over 60 years. He lived alone and worked alone at his loom. As the 19th century drew to a close, there were less and less handloom weavers to be found in their homes due to the expansion and extensive amount of mills. Tim, however, didn't really want to work in a mill, was quite happy doing his trade from home, and he became a local celebrity, and his house and loom became a visitor hotspot for visitors wishing to explore further than Haworth. So we start our story inside Cliff Castle in Keighley. And here we should find an exhibition with Tim Feather. And this is it. And this is Tim Feather's actual hand loom. Can you imagine this in your front room at home? Tim actually kept this loom in his bedroom, and it was said to cover half the bedroom floor. Visitors to Timmy's house would often place orders for fabric, and he was able to weave about 5 yards of cotton a day. And on the loom today, there are still indentations of where Timmy would have held onto the loom for the decades of his work. So now we are in Stanbury, and this is where Tim Feather came from. And his house was somewhere near Pondon Reservoir. So I'm not sure quite whether the house he lived in is still there, but we're going to go to the area. And it became quite a popular destination for visitors to go and not only look at the house, but go and visit him. Certainly from Bronte, the Brontes becoming quite popular. Lots of people were descending on Haworth, and then they were going, well, whilst you're here, why don't you go and visit Tim Feather? And then he'd then quite often send them back into Haworth or into Stanbury and say, yeah, now go and buy my postcard. But we're going to try and find where his house would have been. So to get to where Tim's house was, or possibly still is, we are heading to Bronte waterfalls and then heading up that path there over the top. You probably can't quite make it out, but there, I'll let it zoom back out, that is Top Withens. That's the inspiration for Wuthering Heights. So behind me is the Bronte waterfalls. Not a lot in there today, and we're going to go across the Bronte Bridge whilst we're breathing the Bronte air. Patrick Bronte, the father of the Bronte sisters, is the person who baptised Tim Feather back in 1825, I think, when he was a baby. And we will try and find Tim Feather's grave soon, back in what would have been Patrick Bronte's church, St Michael's in Haworth. But let's see if we can. Still looking for his house. What have you forgotten?
Very odd way of saying Top Withens.
What? Oh wow.
Arashi Gaoka.
Arashi Gaoka. This way. Down at the bottom of the hill here, that house right in the centre, that is the former house of Tim Feather. Is it down here?
Yes.
Wow. So it goes, lovely to find the old house of Tim Feather, and there is a famous photo of him stood outside it greeting visitors, and you can see when I match it up with this one how identical it is still today. Okay, so to finish, we find ourselves in Haworth, back at the St Michael's graveyard, which we've filmed at before quite often on this channel. We're going to see if we can find the final resting place of Tim Feather, and I believe it even says on his headstone, the famous Stanbury Handloom weaver. However, we're not sure quite where it is, so we'll have a search to see if we can find it. So Tom is stood in front of the grave of Timothy Feather. So if you ever come to visit, follow the path on. Just go on the front side of here, past this one, and we find memory of James Feather of Buckley Green Bottom, William Feather, but then there we are, Timothy Feather, the Stanbury Handloom weaver. Died November 30th, 1910, aged 85. Okay, so that is the gravestone of the very famous Timothy Feather. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. Remember to do the usual stuff, like, share, subscribe, and we will see you very soon for the next video. Rest in peace, Tim. Take care.